Are we ready?
Yeah, go
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Ed Johnson. I'm a county attorney. Every December, I chair the meeting briefly. On behalf of the board, I'd like to welcome anyone who's here and anyone who is with us electronically. So we'll call the meeting to order. The first thing I would like to do on behalf of the board is to welcome you as board member, Reverend Harold Gibson.
Thank you, sir.
Reverend Gibson has graciously agreed to be put to work immediately and is going to do the invocation for us tonight.
Yes, sir. Would you pray? We are grateful for your eternal mercies and your faithfulness. We ask your blessings upon the work that we shall do tonight for the good of our community and the county of Scotland, that you would guide us, direct us, and allow all that we say and do to be pleasing in your sight. For it is in your name that we pray. Amen.
If you would stand and join in the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
December, by statute, the board is required to reorganize itself. The first order of business in the reorganization is the election of a chair for the coming year. I will open the floor for nominations for chair of the Scotland County Board of Commissioners for the coming year. Are there nominations for that position?
Nominate McCall.
Mr. Alford has nominated Ms. McCall. Are there other nominations? I hear none, so may I have a motion that the nominations be closed and Ms. McCall be elected by acclamation? So moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Congratulations, Ms. McCall.
Thank you.
Would you like me to do the vice president or
Go
vice
right
chair?
ahead.
Would you- The second order of business will be the election of the vice chair for the coming year. I will open the floor for nominations for that position for the coming year.
I would like to nominate Betty Goldston for the position of vice chair.
Second. Commissioner Gibson has nominated Ms. Goldston for the position of vice chair for the coming year. Are there other nominations? There being none, do I hear a motion that the nominations be closed and Ms. Goldston be elected by acclamation?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Well, thank you, Mr. Johnston. And I'd like to thank this board for their confidence and giving me the honor and privilege of serving as the chair for the next 12 months. We've been through a challenging year, and I think the beginning of 2021 will bring us challenges as well. I'd like to thank Ms. Commissioner Goldston for agreeing to serve as vice chair. And Commissioner Gibson, BJ Gibson's already been welcomed. I'm going to welcome him again.
Thank you.
And also recognize that 4 commissioners were sworn in this morning, COVID style, to be on the board for the next 4 years. Commissioner Alford, Commissioner McVanner, Commissioner Gibson, and Commissioner Gibson. So we are here all together for 7 of us. But thank you for your confidence, and I promise to faithfully exercise the duties in the best interest of all the citizens of Scotland County. And I'll ask for your input, your critique, your advice, and your wisdom as we go through the next 12 months. Next on the agenda is boards and committees. And at this time, we do have vacancies on a number of boards because Commissioner Davis is no longer with us, and so he served on these boards, so they're vacant. We don't necessarily have to fill these tonight, but I wanted, and Jason and I talked about it, to bring to your attention these boards. And if you want to serve on any of these boards, do not hesitate to speak up. The Capital Committee, they meet, I'd say maybe at least 4 or 5 times a year and oversee all the infrastructure items that we are faced. The liaison committee is the committee that, works with the, school system. And I think it kind of has not met in how long, yet, a good while.
Probably 4,000.
Yeah. But it's a vital committee and it has served us well as we have negotiated our funding for the schools. Board of Health, they meet once a month. The Board of Equalization and Review, is very critical as well, the Fire Commission, and then the Regional Land Use Advisory Council. And Jason has told me that he, usually attends that meeting in lieu of a commissioner. Can you continue to do that?
Assuming that they continue, I mean, whatever they get back, I mean,
A lot of meetings have not taken place, a lot of meetings are virtual, things are just real different right now.
Mr.
So,
Chairman, why we couldn't do like the been doing? The
I can't
person
hear you. I'm
that
sorry.
took, why can't we do like the been doing? The person that got off the board that had that position, and when boards replaced.
What's he saying?
We've been replacing the previous board member with the new board member. Why not doing it tonight? Let BJ take all Bob's position, not unless he don't want it.
Well, I
It's
mean,
also on board that's
I was just gonna give commissioners the opportunity to serve where it suited them. I mean, that's all.
they
I
had the position, but Bob's gone now, so BJ fall right in his position.
I agree, and if BJ wants to do that, that is fine. I'm not holding
BJ,
anything
you
up.
want to do that?
I'm willing, yes, ma'am. I'm willing to serve.
I make a motion that BJ take Bob's old position,
So he would be,
his old positions.
he would go on Capital, Liaison Board of Health, E&R and Fire Commission. So you're making a motion, is that what?
I'm making a motion that he take all Bob's old positions.
That every board that Bob served on, you want BJ to serve?
BJ take,
I understand, okay, all right, so you're putting that in the form of a motion.
I made a motion.
All right, is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, we do have a motion and
Are
a
you
second.
good?
so-
Yeah, I'm fine, yeah, that's fine.
That's a lot of boards.
That's a lot of board. That's what I was saying. That's a lot of
He
board.
said he ready to run.
And if you find that that doesn't suit you, BJ,
We
there's
can
no
deal with it
reason
down the
not to
road.
come back and say, I've got a conflict here and I've got a conflict here, and we will share the responsibility.
Yes, ma'am. I signed up to work. I'm ready.
Okay, all
Yes,
right,
ma'am.
that's fine. Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Thank you.
Opposed, like sign. Okay, the last two appointments are made by the chair of the board. And, the first one is the Economic Development Commission. And as chair of the Board of Commissioners, it falls to me to make that appointment. And I believe that John Alford would be an excellent appointment for several reasons. You've been on this board a long time. You are certainly familiar with, economic development. You have worked in industry. You are a businessman. You are a former city council member. And I think that you would bring a great deal of expertise to the EDC. So would you be willing to serve in that capacity?
If nobody else wants it, yes.
Okay, all right, thank you. And then the last appointment is the Southeast Regional Airport Authority. And just, not sure how much of this has been widely publicized, but that is basically Lamar-Jackson Airport Authority. And our Senator McInnes, was really the driving force in bringing about brand new legislation that allowed for a reorganization of the board of what we used to call LMA. And with that legislation, it gives the Board of Commissioners the opportunity to appoint a citizen to that board to represent the county. I'm particularly grateful for that. I think this new organization will serve Scotland County real well. In doing that, Senator McInnes let it be known that he had a request and a preference for appointment to that board, and it was former Commissioner Guy McCook. So at this time, I would like to put into nomination Guy McCook for the Southeast Regional Airport Authority. I second that. And we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, say aye. Opposed, like sign? Okay. Well, that was easy. Thank you, Commissioner Gibson. Moving on, we will approve the agenda. Do I have a motion to approve our agenda? Do I hear a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
At this time, we have our public forum. Is there anybody here to speak, Jason? There are some people in the parking lot, and I don't know if they're here for the hearing or for the forum.
Tell her she has 3 minutes. I think we got one person.
Nobody for the forum.
One person.
Oh, for the forum,
I think for the forum, she wouldn't tell me what her subject matter was.
so
Said
it's
she had a
coming in.
variety of things, so
All right.
it's not anything specific, it has to be under public forum. Is she coming in? Yeah, she's coming in. So,
Public hearing.
there he is. That's the reason I public hearing starts. I'll let you know.
Jason brought him around. I thought he gave it. I tell you, you'd have that already.
I've been there from the
Okay, so she has decided that she's decided she wants to speak at the public hearing.
public hearing, okay.
Yes.
Okay, we're going to the public forum, then we need to, take a look at our consent agenda, and I will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So move.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, Beth, are you with us?
Yes, I am.
All right, you are up for our financial update.
All right. We had budgeted at June 30th, 2020, $45 million. We actually spent, we actually brought in, 42.5 million in revenues. And, expenditures, we spent 7.5 million, and that left us a deficit of 934,000. And part of this, in our initial budget, we had allocated or appropriated fund balance to cover several capital projects that we had going. So that kind of offsets, it looks worse than what it is, but it offsets what we anticipated was going to take place during the year.
So that was not a surprise.
That was not,
Right, I'm just saying that's a clarification.
yes, that's correct. And so looking at where we were, 2019 with our unassigned fund balance, we were at 22%. And for 2020, this is an unaudited figure, but I have calculated 21.66% as of where we're standing at this point. Once audit is completed, that number could change a little bit, but right now we're in a 22% range, which is still well above our policy that we have in place, and of course it meets the ODC's recommendation of the 8%. Do you have any questions?
Well, I've got a question, and this may be more of a Kevin question than more for the bookkeeping part of it, because this is through 6/30, right? That's 575, and I don't want to get in, open that can of worms, but have we accounted for that in the budget? For an audit purpose?
That will be a no disclosure in our audit report, and that was an expenditure in the 2020 fiscal year.
Okay. You follow, I just don't want to get hit by an audit with.
Yeah, it will be a disclosure for the note. There is no offsetting revenue.
Okay. But it's accounted for, that's
Yes.
what I was getting.
And also, one thing, I just do a quick, note. On here, expenditures over, was faster than, or more than revenues by 900,000. But on the page where we're talking about fund balance, our fund balance went from 8.8 million to 9.4 million. That is a portion of our fund balance. That's the unassigned portion. So that's the amount that we have in cash minus the receivables, minus the payables, basically. That's the amount of spendable cash. So basically our cash position was better this year than last year, but we used fund balance to use the balance the budget.
Then why the percentage go down?
Because the amount of expenditures was 40 million in 19 versus 43 million.
43.
Is that it?
That's it, just a brief one. And we'll probably go over, have the audit from presentation, go over it at the January, February retreat, so we can have more time if the board is interested.
Next is the Community Development Block Grant, coronavirus public hearing.
This, the state issued CDBG CV grant application. It was a first come, first served grant process. I believe they had approximately $90 million assigned for this. And the state cut off applications at about $125 million. So right now, we had the Lumber River Council of Governments working on an application for us as they were working on applications for other counties. So ours was not in, but we wanted to go ahead and have the public hearing because it's essential for application. So in case there is additional federal, state dollars that become available for that program, we would go ahead and have a public hearing so we could move quickly with application.
Is there anyone here to speak for or against the hearing? Hearing none, I'll close the public hearing. Is there any action that we need to take, Kevin?
There's no action at this point in time.
No action, okay. All right. The next
I like
one-
to explain, okay, so we finished with that. Public hearing, right?
Yes.
Okay.
I shouldn't say
We just explain a little something about the FFCRA CARES Fund for Older Adults. We just explain a little something about that. I was trying to understand this thing.
In the consent agenda,
Yeah, yes. I know you said if it becomes available,
right.
we don't know for sure it's gonna come available. We have applied for it, or we get ready to apply for it.
This is funds, and April will be on in a minute for the SCATS program. She can give you more details, but this, the $151,000 are monies that have been allocated to Scotland County and are part of the recurring low energy assistance program.
So when it becomes available, people would be able to come in and apply for it. Application for this program is fairly quick and simple. And it will be it is normally a first come, first served program. And there will be some, they normally attempt to find ways of putting opening it up for preference for seniors and disabled individuals first. But at some point in time, it does become available for anyone who meets qualifications.
I'm sure the county already has a program, that it takes care every year for
Yes.
people. Would those people be able to apply again for more funds than this? Could it involve new people that if the program has different guidelines? What are the guidelines?
Most of it is income-based with generally someone who has a medical issue where they need heat and or power and are threatened to disconnect. So, and April can give you the specifics, but it is a situation where somebody has if someone's elderly, disabled, and they are threatening to lose their heat source for the winter, they can bring that information in and apply.
Okay. Thank you.
Now we're up to our public hearing. I'm going to open the public hearing for the mass gathering restriction ordinance. Do we have one person?
No, we have one more. I know we have one person.
Take away somebody else.
Just her. And I believe, Jason, you did not receive any specific comment on this topic?
Hello?
I guess I have some concern, not guess, I have some serious concerns.
If you'll please just state your name and your address, and in our public hearing, we allow 3 minutes for comment.
Mhm. My name is Holly Hexler. I'm a resident of Scotland County. I live in Laurinburg. My concern is the order, the enforcement of masks and the impact that it's having on families and the lockdowns. This is, you shut down businesses, mom and pop businesses, all to support corporations who've made billions of dollars, billions. But regular middle-class people who have businesses are being shut down for this pandemic that was actually forecast, if you'd like to say, in October of 2019 with Event 201. I mean, how is it that nobody else has done any research or looked into these things? I think this to me is a bit perplexing. Masks, I just disagree. I absolutely disagree with killing small business for this. It's just, you're killing America. You're killing the spirit of everything that all of our families who came here fought for. They fought for the right to grow, learn, educate themselves, to inspire greatness. And what you're telling everybody is that no, if you don't obey, we're going to punish you. Obedience to what level? To what extent? I mean, where's it go from here? We start with this, and then what's next? At what point? When there's no more mom and pop businesses left? When we have to rely on corporate America? Is that it? Just crush the hopes and dreams and the history of all of our families for this? You guys have, the governor has, what did you get? There was five different things that he quoted for the mask mandate. You've got Germany. Germany has a population of 83 million. We're 330 million. I mean, you're like comparing apples to oranges when you're looking at, what is this? Really, what is the real issue? Is it obedience? Because that's what it feels like. It doesn't feel like this is for our protection or our health. It really doesn't. It feels like there's something else here, and it doesn't feel right. It's not registering as wholesome or for the good of the people. It seems like it's for the good of the few at the expense of everybody else. So we can argue about who believes what, who has what. The bottom line is, we're all human beings. It doesn't matter if you're Democrat or Republican, we all have to live together. And if we don't make conscious decisions together to get through this or whatever, we're gonna crush our history. And I don't think it's worth that at all. So all the other crap needs to get put aside, and we need to come together and fix this instead of he said, she said. Who cares? We're all human. At the end of the day, we're all human. So I should have been more prepared, but that's the gist of it. And I appreciate your time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
We appreciate your comment.
Thank you very much.
Is there anyone else to speak? I think we've determined that there's not, so I will, at this time, close the public hearing. And I will, then, turn it over to our attorney, Mr. Johnston, to review with us, the ordinance that you have in your packet.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The proposed language in front of the board for everyone except Commissioner Gibson is language that basically was seen by board members at the special meeting on November 19th. The notes that I had from that particular meeting, at least in my opinion, reflected the only consensus modification that the board felt would be appropriate related to excluding churches from the definition of mass gatherings. This is really focused on mass gatherings, not on masking and things of that nature, but the language was inserted to specifically exclude, per the board's consensus, church services, with the additional language that had been suggested that was to encourage churches to take reasonable efforts in what they do to protect the members of the church, of their respective churches. So there is no, particular specific additional language other than related to what the board's consensus was at that time. And I will say for purposes of procedure on this, that the, under 153A-45 concerning adoption of ordinances, that in order to adopt at the meeting in which it's first introduced an ordinance or action having the effect of an ordinance, with certain exceptions that don't apply here, the ordinance must receive the approval of all the members of the Board of Commissioners. I have been informed that at least one board member is not going to vote for this proposed ordinance. So that being the case, I think if there are suggestions about modifications on the ordinance that if the board desires to proceed with it, we can incorporate those into a proposal for the next regular meeting, if you desire to do anything.
Can you tell us what the, I was thinking about two things, the objection by the commissioner that does not want to approve it. What, is there anything in the language that is preventing them from
I
approving?
think you may be able to speak for yourself.
Yeah, we had just talked about it outside and there was some language in there that, you know, and I'm not an attorney, and so I didn't play one on television either, but there's a lot of stuff in here. The first thing that I would ask in any kind of ordinance that you have to have some sort of mechanism for appeal. You know, and you have to have that identified in the ordinance. You can't assume it, you can't, you know, that type of thing. One of our biggest hurdles, I think, is going to be, what about the city of Laurinburg? Or the city of Wagram, or the city of Gibson, whatever. City of Laurinburg Police Department cannot do civil, which is what this is. So anything in the city limits of Laurinburg would have to be handled by a sheriff, which, as we know, probably can't be done. I mean, with the number of people they have, you know. So that was one of the questions I had on it.
You mean the sheriff, you say, for the city of Laurinburg?
Right, the city of Laurinburg can't enforce the civil. They don't do civil.
Okay.
So that means if it was in the city of Laurinburg, the sheriff's department, which has authority to do it in the city of Laurinburg, but that just increased their size by 3 times of what they already.
You're talking about staffing wise, it would not be feasible. for them.
Right, but as they are now. So, you know, in the other one thing that's not included in this that I think would need to be in it, is something along the line of addressing private residences. Because as you read this says any place that they gather for that amount of people, 10 or 25, whatever the number is. And that may change tomorrow. You know, the governor's coming up tomorrow, and all this may be mute tomorrow. So, yeah, and so that concerns me, because even with the church exemption in there, which I know we all wanted that specified in there, you know, if you don't specify things in here, it can be left to interpretation, and I don't think we can leave it to do that. So the questions I had was, you know, on the appeal, the city police department, the private residences, and what are we doing? Maybe this gets into what the lady was talking about there a little bit more on we sat in this room not that long ago and talked about our oath to the Constitution. And this could be very easily considered a violation of the First, Fourth, and the 14th Amendment if we're not careful.
Well, it was our attempt, Ms. Ivy, Commissioner Ivy, to try to help this situation going on in all the counties, but Scotland, all the main emphasis. We're trying to find a way to help bring down this death rate, sickness, hospitalization, and the director of the hospital asked us, would we try as commissioners to come up with ways to help, you know, people And, we know that these mass gatherings are happening, especially on Thanksgiving. Everybody want to go home and get some of mama's dressing and turkey. And people are dying like flies, literally, to me. I mean, we got so many deaths. I hate to look at television now. I find myself looking at more movies because I don't want to hear the way the situation is going. And the situation is pretty bad. And so we sit here as commissioners, and I heard when the governor Cooper was on television, and Dr. Cohen recommended that we try the civil penalty thing. She said, as commissioners, you could you come up with a civil penalty, because we can't necessarily do criminal penalties. So we can sit back and let people die, let people get sick, the hospital's overcrowded, and because we are afraid of whatever, we're not gonna do anything. We're always gonna have complaints. Everybody's not gonna agree, but we gotta live with ourselves as commissioners for the health of the people of Scotland County.
You know, I don't in any way think we should not do anything.
But what can we do if we don't have a civil
You know, we
penalty?
because, well, another concern with any of this would be, is, you know, we've all heard of that, they're COVID tired, or COVID, whatever the name is on it. And at some point, it's gonna cross that line and people are gonna start pushing back.
Well, let them push
And-
back.
But what I'm saying, well, but what I'm saying is, I think you catch more flies with honey than you do with salt. And if, because as I go around now, I can say the compliance in the few places I go is much better than it was 3 months ago even. You know, I mean, with the you know, of course I don't go anywhere that's gathered that much anyway. And I don't go to Walmart, so it's the only place I can think of that many people that. But I've noticed that it's much, much better than it's probably been since the beginning within the last 3 months or so. But I just don't want to cause an issue where people just say, you know what, I'm not going to do anything anymore. You know, and I just don't. I'm not. It's not that I'm against it. Number one, we got to get the wording right in it, of course. But if we push too hard, I'm afraid it's going to backfire on us.
Well, this really just reflects the governor's executive order. I mean, we have not created a new wheel here with this ordinance except for the civil penalty. But as far as the number and the mass gathering, that is in place until Friday, December the 11th, this coming Friday.
Well, yeah, but I mean, it's probably going to change or stay the same. I'm under that assumption.
And I certainly don't have the governor's ear, and I don't know what he's gonna do tomorrow or Wednesday. I'd be afraid to even speculate, but you made a statement earlier that what we're doing may be moot, depending on what he comes out
That's right.
with. Is he gonna speak tomorrow or Wednesday?
I'm understanding
You know,
tomorrow, but I don't know. I thought I heard somebody say it tomorrow,
Tomorrow, okay.
but it may be.
He'll speak this week.
It'll be this week. Well, it has to before Friday,
Yeah,
so,
it'll be good.
yeah.
Madam Chairman,
Sure, go right ahead.
we can't make it, no matter what we do here, we won't make it any worse. But if people don't do the simple thing, that's wearing the mask, safe distancing, 6 feet apart, and don't gather in big crowds, less people will die. So, until we get the vaccine. And I agree with Tim. I don't know how you do that, because we know 20% of the people are not gonna wear masks. Okay? We know
6 months
30% of the
ago, I'd have
people-
said that's right, but I don't think that's the number now. I mean,
Okay,
literally,
okay,
it looks to be
that's-
99.5%.
That's what, was reported today, 20% of the people are just not gonna wear masks.
Really?
Okay, yeah, and that's their right. You know, they don't have to wear a mask. But what we want to do is ask everybody else, because 30% of the people will get corona and won't get sick. And so we just have to hope for the best that we can get the vaccine. But until that, You know, I know this is not a perfect, recommendation from the governor. He recognizes that. So he's gonna have to update it tomorrow. But we have to do something. And if we don't do anything, I know I've been to the cemetery too many times already. All of us in here know someone who has died from it, and it's nice to know to know someone, because that someone could have been me, could have been you. I've been exposed to it twice, tested negative twice. It is a major problem, and I think we should do something.
And the wording may not be correct.
Yeah.
We met one time on this. And the only thing we did, I mean, we expressed the need for something.
Well,
And
I'm
yet,
not saying I'm
right, it
against
may not be perfect now, you know, but we feel like, you know, that was necessary, that we, you know, try to stand for something, with this, than sit back and do nothing.
Well, no, I'm not saying I'm not against it. We gotta get the wording right, I think.
And I think there's some issues in the document itself. I think there's some terms that need to be
That's what I'm.
more clearly defined. And there's a couple, some of the items about citing someone, if we send someone out there and they cite an owner because there's 50 people in this location, do we have the authority, does that person have the authority to disperse that crowd? You know, I think there's some things that we want to put in that don't exist in this, that if we can put in there, we ought to try to do that. So I think there's some language that probably needs to be added.
Well, one of the things, and I didn't bring this up originally, but in item 4, it states that talks about this, the people, the business are subject to the violator and the non-owner occupant of the building. So if I own a building and I'm leasing it to ABC Business and they're in violation, I'm gonna get a fine too. And I might live in California or wherever. I don't know that that's enforceable, but I mean.
Who created this document?
DHHS.
So what would be our ability to alter it as we see fit?
I think we can alter it however we want.
It will be our ordinance.
It was just a-
Ordinance signed down.
And this is the first time that we've discussed this.
Well, we saw it at a special meeting 2 weeks ago before you came on the board. So this is your first time when you got your board packet to review it. Yes, that's true.
And also there was a couple of issues at the time, and I don't know whether the sheriff is on the meeting with us. But there was an issue with a particular location in the county that draws a crowd, not every day, but several times during the year. It was particularly interesting to him. And I don't think we were gearing this document specifically for that one entity. But I think that we probably found that no matter what we put in this document, it's probably not going to help us in regard to that one place. And it seems to me that I think that one of the other locations in the county that we had some conversation about, I don't think they will be having anything remotely like what they've had because we've gotten to cold weather. I don't think we'll have that problem for the next 3 or 4 or 5 months. I also think that whatever we're going to do is getting ready to change with whatever the governor does this week.
I think it's all gonna change tomorrow. We can do whatever it is.
So my suggestion is I think we ought to do something. I just don't think this is the document we ought to use to do it.
I would, one option that is out there in addition to an ordinance, and like the town of city of Greensboro has done something where rather than an ordinance, they went through their state of emergency. So there is something that if you've gotten the language to the point where the board was comfortable with this could actually be done through a state of emergency. Scotland County has been under a local state of emergency since approximately April. So that would be in effect. And that state of emergency can be modified by the, either by the board or by the chairman of the board when the board is not in session. So as anything that's done with this, if this is done and the specific a 10-person limit is in there, and in the end of January, the governor eases that to a higher number, the board would actually have to go back to a modification process to amend the ordinance to modify it. If it's done through state of emergency, the chairman or the board could do so in a single meeting. So that is just another avenue of getting to point in time, but the state of emergency could give more flexibility than an actual ordinance.
And it
Because
also
hopefully in
says,
a couple of months, you're gonna be repealing this ordinance anyway.
sounds like the state of emergency is more expedient, because I think we're in a fluid situation. The governor's gonna do something this week, we're gonna go in January, February may be different, and we can't be amending an ordinance every other month to make sure that we're not out of compliance with what the governor's doing. Does that make sense? So what I've heard so far is that Scotland County would like to be able to have a document that protects people, that is in compliance with what the governor's executive orders are. The wording in this does not go, it's not elaborate enough in terms of a better language. And that we also recognize that something could be coming tomorrow, Wednesday, from the governor that would make all this exercise completely moot. One thing that I noticed in this language that I thought needed clarification was the definition, to expand a little bit on what mass gathering is, because some of the talk in the community is that the people at FCC and Pilkington wouldn't be able to go to work because there'd be too many people there. So I think people are confused about what it means for people to come together. And then the other is that it's complaint driven. I mean, it's not like we're going to be asking our local law enforcement to go out monitoring businesses and gatherings to see if they're in compliance. It is all complaint driven, as all ordinances usually are. And nowhere in this ordinance does it say that it's complaint driven. And I think that would give citizens maybe some measure of comfort in that we're not out there monitoring and trying to be punitive when what we're trying to do is be protected.
And I would just like to say this, if we don't do something by the first of the year, it may be too late to do anything after that. Because we will see the worst of the worst. And then the vaccine will be coming. So it won't be any need to do anything after that, but hope folks will take the vaccine.
You hope.
Yeah, we hope it'll be available. But if we're gonna do anything, we need to get on the fast track and get ready to respond after the governor speaks tomorrow.
Yeah, I agree.
Madam Chair, I think that you have greater flexibility and can make broader coverage in a modification of the existing state of emergency, which can be done, as Mr. Patterson pointed out, by the chair, if you choose to do that. You can go beyond the scope of simply the mass gatherings to other types of things that, if the chair is inclined to do so, will be beyond the mass gathering. That can be done without a meeting of the board.
Would masks could be covered in there? Well, tell us how we do it, because I once had us out by December
Well,
for Christmas.
Mechanically, how it's done is the chair determines that it's appropriate and necessary to do it, and I'm not sure how the chair feels at this point about that.
I'm inclined to see what the governor, you have told us that we need a unanimous vote on the ordinance tonight, and we're not gonna have that, so that tells us that, we can table it until we see what the governor says, and maybe go ahead and recess for a meeting next week when we can have better language.
Now, you have to have it at a regular meeting.
Do what?
The second consideration, if you're going the route of the ordinance, would have to be at a regular meeting, which would be January. You have greater flexibility. It can be done quicker, with less procedurally, if it's done by the chair, or if the board wanted to meet to modify the state of emergency, that it can be done that way. You're a little bit hamstrung on the ordinance process because of the statute that
Yeah, statutes govern the ordinance process.
procedurally how you can do it. And again, the ordinance only applies to mass gatherings.
I know.
The state of emergency modification, if you choose to use it, would apply to more than what you had before you tonight.
Well, they said that January is gonna be the worst month of it, so maybe we could get, what date is our first meeting? Say what?
I'm assuming it would be forward.
4th of January?
Well, doesn't it seem for us to get what we really want is to give the chair the authority to do what I'm trying to just put before us because this board not gonna be unanimous on it.
He said it has to be at a.
So the chair can make the decision to,
That is true.
Well, there's two different avenues. The ordinance avenue is the one that's gonna be slower. You won't be able to do anything with that until January. The modification of the existing state of emergency by the chair or by the board, if it so chooses to meet again, you could do that.
does the board have to be unanimous when it meet again?
No,
Does not have to be?
not on that.
Not on that.
Okay.
So we could actually recess until a week from now, see what the governor has put forth this week, and determine how we want to modify the state of emergency.
As opposed to using
As
the
opposed
ordinance.
to the ordinance.
Right.
But you're saying she could do it without us meeting?
That's correct.
Yeah, and I can, the chair can do it without that process. I think because of the, what words do I want to use? The heightened intensity of this subject, I think we would serve our citizens well if the modification to the state of emergency was done with consensus of the whole board. I think it would be more receptive by the citizens if they saw the whole board acting on this as opposed to the chair. Better transparency, I don't know. I'm not dodging it, I'm not saying I'm not willing to do it, but I want our citizens to know that the board is fully engaged in it and offer complete transparency on it as much as possible.
I had McKelvin tell our attorney, Ms. Johnson, tell us exactly how would it be said. We had declared Scotland County a state of emergency first.
That's already been done.
That's already been done. Then how would we?
Well, there would be potential modifications to the existing state of emergency, and you could cover a number of things in there, including the civil penalties. And I have something of a draft that's put together that we could distribute to the board members if they can choose to go that route. Again, subject to modifications by a consensus of this board. But I think, there are a number of entities that need to be involved, and Mr. Ivey mentioned one, obviously the sheriff is going to be involved with enforcement on this, and the manager has the ability on civil matters to direct county employees. However, he does not, in my opinion, doesn't have the authority to direct the sheriff as an elected official, nor the sheriff's deputy. So what you would be trying to secure under the state of emergency would be the sheriff's agreement and cooperation as to enforcement.
I was very pleased with the sheriff, and he seemed willingness to cooperate so well.
It sounded like it
Very
was.
pleased, yes.
Yeah.
I mean, I definitely think that for our citizens,
I'm still
Collaboration.
concerned with the state of emergency in the city part of it, though.
Well, the city is excluded under a state of emergency.
That's what I thought.
Under the statutes, and I've, like I said, put a draft together on that. It specifically refers to the statute that excludes anything within the corporate limits of a municipality, and there are several of them in Scotland County that would be excluded.
So 90% of the county is gonna be excluded from this if we do it.
Well, statutorily, they are excluded.
Yeah, well, yeah, but I mean, yeah, I'm
But if we went the ordinance route, they would be included.
Well, the way this ordinance is presented from DHHS, that will be just for mass gatherings.
And if the board wanted to do this through state of emergency, we'd also take that same language and share it with each municipality and bring them up discussion to hopefully get them to have comparable language. Especially the city of Austin.
So what do we do? What do we need to decide tonight? We're meeting here tonight, we will not have a regular meeting to the first of the year. Let's make a decision as to what we want to do before we go any further.
If the board would be interested in, I think, if the board is interested in going the route of an ordinance, it would be best if the board would go ahead and take a vote tonight. Assuming it passed a simple majority, it would still not be effective until a second vote in January. That would at least start the process, so you could go off and still make additional revisions to the language and bring those in between now and January. If the board is interested in doing more through state of emergency, at that point in time, we can go ahead and continue looking at revisions in the language using what we have as a base with additional items. And then the board can set up another date in the next 2 weeks and come back together, as well as potentially invite representatives from some of the other municipalities
And law.
and law enforcement.
So we can actually do two things at one time. We can go ahead and take the vote on the ordinance, knowing that if we come back in January and we have it revised to the point to where it's acceptable for a complete unanimous vote. But in the meantime, we're working on a declaration of emergency, just like Kevin described.
I just like the declaration of emergency in a sense, because we can go in a little bit more with mask and all that. This ordinance is just for mass gathering. And I like to go on with the emergency and get it over with. Let's do one thing, decide tonight what we're gonna do and get busy with one thing.
We can't do an ordinance tonight. That's not gonna happen.
Madam Chair, it's not absolutely necessary that you vote on this ordinance tonight. Under the statute, it says if the ordinance is approved by a majority of those voting, but not all of the members of the board, or if the ordinance is not voted on at that meeting, this being the first meeting it was considered, it shall be considered at the next regular meeting of the board.
Okay.
If it then, or at any time within 100 days of introduction, receives a majority of the board being present, the ordinance is adopted. So you may choose to vote on it tonight if you'd like to, but you don't have to.
But it doesn't change what happens in January.
Right.
Right, it won't speed the process of it, it's just that
I'm just concerned that we're leaving out 90% of the county. How are we gonna do, I mean, I don't know the answer.
What good would it do?
well, the city has the ability, if it chooses, to adopt something
So,
regarding the
yeah,
state
I
of
understand.
But if we do the state of emergency and the chair issues a state of emergency amendment, that does not include the city unless they accept they enact a similar state of emergency later.
It would not include anything within the corporate limits of any municipality.
Has there been any conversation with anybody from the city about this?
I've had no conversation with anyone except the chair and the sheriff at Ms. McCall's direction.
And Commissioner, you're saying that it excludes the city, but if the sheriff it agrees to enforce it within the city, it can be enforced.
It doesn't apply to the city, right?
Are you talking about the
I'm
ordinance?
talking about an ordinance.
An ordinance would, or could.
If the sheriff agrees to
Yeah,
enforce it,
okay, so
then the ordinance would be effective in the city.
it's in effect, but the city won't enforce it or can enforce it, and on the ordinance.
And
Now
the,
I'm confused.
and the sheriff specifically appreciates language in the proposed ordinance, I think. In this, he wants language in both that would give his deputies the ability to warn and educate, not automatically issue a by a civil penalty or violation.
In the municipalities. That was,
He wants that whichever way you go.
he can do it county period.
Waverly is not included, Gibson not included.
Well, Laurinburg is municipality, Gilson is a municipality, Wago and East Laurinburg.
If he's allowed to do it within the municipalities, he wants the ability for his people not to be required to issue violations, but to have the ability to educate and give written warnings.
That's good, now that's good.
I think that's appropriate, and I agree with that. I think that's good for our citizens.
Yeah.
It's good
So we can put that in our ordinance, so you can do that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's good.
It's a board decision, but yes, you can.
Oh,
Yeah, but we can modify this ordinance any way that we choose, essentially, because it is the Scotland County ordinance. And we've got, I know that Attorney Johnson's made good notes over there, and he's heard from, I think, everybody here, thoughts that need to be, expanded on. The warning and education is one, appeal is one, distinguishing between public gatherings and private gatherings, and how it impacts our city police, force. Any other point that I've missed?
I think when if you're citing a crowd, can you just give the person who is doing the citation have the authority to disperse the crowd?
I got that.
You got it.
I mean, I wrote down what you, what, did you have another?
Well, I had several. No, another one would be if you, what's the time frame between the first citation and you can go back to the second citation? Is there a minimum amount of time?
and we all know through the city of Scotland healthcare system, the hospital, he would like to see us join him in trying to do something to keep us safe and healthy. Because he told us of the number of rooms, ICU beds that he has available. And once we exceed that out of his, he can't keep us healthy. He's gonna have to ship us off somewhere. We don't want that to happen. And the only thing we can do is put in something to try to keep our folk.
Someone told me,
We have to do it.
someone told me that their neighbor, got sick. They didn't know he had coronavirus, but anyway. And he went to Juvenile Hospital, and they had no beds, I don't know what kind it was. And they sent him back home, and he died that night. So, I mean, maybe that was stretched, but he said it happened to his neighbor. So, I'm saying, if the hospitals can't take us, now my son-in-law just died. This is one healthy man, no side effects. Now, what are we gonna do? Reverend BJ, what we gonna do? Can't take us, can't take our family, our children. This is why we're trying to do something. Something.
Well, I do think there are people who are taking this seriously who have not taken it seriously earlier. We had 6 deaths in September, 8 in August, 6 in August, 8 in September, 12 in October, and 14 in November. It's not getting better, okay? It's getting worse.
I agree with, I think the compliance on mask is better. I mean, there's definitely an improvement on that. I think it's not just one thing, it's a combination of the mask wearing, trying to stay home, avoid large crowds. All of it makes for a nice, complete package of how you protect yourself and protect others. But I'm trying to summarize where we go from here, what direction that we take. I'm not sure I can do that right now. I know we are not going to pass an ordinance tonight. I know that we have given our attorney a good 6 or 7 different bullet points to incorporate into the ordinance that we can certainly look at in January and not before then. And in the meantime, the governor is going to speak and say something. We don't know what that will be, and a declaration is still a possibility for this board if that deems necessary.
But I think that, I like what you're saying. I think we can move forward with the ordinance for the 1st of January, but in the meantime, depending on what the governor does, depending on conversations with representatives of the municipalities, if they think they can
put in place something similar to what your declaration is going to be, what the chair's declaration will be, we may be able to get it done before 4 weeks from now.
Right.
And I don't think
When does
it's
the
wrong
city-
working on both.
When does the city meet? Second Tuesday?
Second Tuesday in the month.
Or first Tuesday after the 15th.
Oh, the first Tuesday after the 15th.
I do have a structure in place, not intended to be a final, draft of an amendment to the order declaring an emergency that Mr. Davis had entered. Now, I would suggest that we see what the governor, or the board sees what the governor had to say tomorrow, Wednesday, and perhaps work off of that to maybe incorporate some additional things into it or modify it in some way, but be happy to distribute, if the board's inclined to go that route, distribute that language as modified. If the chair's determined that he prefers that the board do it.
And the sheriff has seen it as well.
He has seen this, and will be sharing comments with you or anyone.
One of our goals is just to make sure, do all we can to ensure that people wear masks and safe distancing. That's our goal. That's all we want. I don't want people to have to pay money. We just, I'm a small business owner, and I heard what Tim said, not only will the person that's occupying the place be fined, the owner of the property will be fined. So I don't want fines, and I don't want anybody else to be fined. I want folks just to wear a mask.
But they're not gonna do that, John.
Pardon? Well, that's what I asked what our goals are, and we want folks to wear a mask and
And adhere to the governor's orders of mass gathering. That's pretty straightforward when you just boil it down to that.
and that's a hard one.
That is a hard one.
That's a hard one. You're talking about people home, you're talking about the church, and
The
nobody
churches
wants to
are-
tackle the church because you may be getting into something that you can't do anything about. We just gonna ask them.
Well,
So you need
I think
anything
they
else
know.
from us, Mr. Johnson?
Fairly certain they know. I haven't heard of any.
So we just need to go ahead and do what we can do. Just be ready at our next meeting in January to do that.
Right.
So we're gonna do ordinance, is that what we're saying? And then we're gonna do the emergency later and after we do that, is that what we're saying?
Now, I think what they're saying, Ms. Golston, is wait and see what the governor says Tuesday or Wednesday, and then Sharon can make the decision, hey, we need to move forward with the changing the state of the emergency, or the ordinance, or both, or whatever, and then she can contact us all individually about that. If it's just that matter, and maybe we could just all do that on teleconference, or if she could just get a consent from everybody by phone or whatever, instead of having to come back together.
And then we still have the option of the ordinance in January.
Right, that's what I'm saying, it doesn't kill the ordinance.
No, it doesn't.
So under your scenario, the chair makes whatever communications with board members she believes is necessary, and she.
Well, I hope you will make all of them necessary.
Well, I know, but I mean,
Or we could do it as a
well,
conference
you may
call,
have more than one call with.
or an online. I'm just trying to keep everybody from having to get back together.
Right,
You
well, I can go to, Morgan Center with one other commissioner, we have a conference call, 15, 20, 30 minutes, whatever it takes, and decide what needs to be in the emergency declaration, if we deem it necessary after what the governor said, and we know that in January, we still have the option of the ordinance, with a revised ordinance, not what we have in front of us tonight. I don't think we need any action on that, but do people understand what Tim has outlined?
Okay.
Okay.
Does that make more sense? Or whatever?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
I do, but I do want to ask a question, and I respect the young lady who just spoke. But I do want to know, what is our policy on masks? Because if I was just a regular citizen watching the meeting and we had someone come in and speak and we didn't ask them to wear a mask, and then I hear this conversation, it would have me wondering, well, what type policy does the commissioners have in place for masks? I mean, because she came in twice and did not have a mask, and it was never addressed, I mean, what are we doing?
That's a good question.
That's a good question. I don't know that I have an answer for you, BJ. It's an excellent question. I mean, there's no mask mandate in place, to my knowledge.
But we need one.
Is there? Well, yes, there is. The last order from the governor.
Which is why we're saying we want to enforce it.
Yeah, I mean, the
But
governor's
we're-
order says masks inside with people that are not your immediate family, and outdoors, so when she came in, we could have requested that she put on a mask, you know.
How can you do that when you have board members don't even wear masks?
Well, you got board members that are sitting here with a medical exception from their pulmonologist because it's hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. He can't wear a mask more than 5 minutes. If I go to the store or Lowe's or I don't go to Walmart, I'll put a mask on because I can wear it for a short time. If I wear it for longer than that time, then I'm gonna die.
Well, then we cannot mandate because it's visually. I mean, somebody open the door and then they say, wear your mask, and look around and we all don't have it on our house, there's no way we can do anything about that.
Well, that's why also in the ordinance as well as in the draft state of emergency, there's not a individual penalty for not wearing a mask. Just because you do get into the situation where enforcement, Commissioner Ivey and I are both not wearing a mask. Okay, he has a legitimate medical reason. I just don't want to.
Yeah,
And there are,
How do you know the difference?
yeah, that's what I'm saying, we won't know the difference.
So that's why.
And you can't ask.
You can't ask, right,
So
right.
that's why the individual mask mandate has always been a recommendation, a strong
Yeah,
recommendation.
I understand.
because there are exemptions.
There are so many people with asthma.
See, I didn't know you.
I walked in a store, just an establishment, and a young man that I knew was sitting there, and he had to take his mask off. And he said, I have lung cancer, I can't breathe. So, you know,
But when I look at all those people coming to Dollar General and wait, half of them don't have a mask on, all of them don't have, you know. So we do have a problem in this county. My daughter came from Baltimore, she couldn't believe coming through North Carolina, people weren't wearing no masks. She just couldn't believe it, you know, stopping at various service stations and all that. In Baltimore, they have to, go anywhere, you gotta have a mask on. So we do have some problems in this county and this state.
And my point in making that comment was, I just wanted to make sure that as we move forward, we are vigilant about our concern. Because I think with a lot of people I've seen, just your reminding some people causes them, I've gone into the store and just forgot my mask. And when I come in, someone says, where's your mask? I went back and get it. I don't think that was the case with that lady, but there may have been others who would have come in. If we would have had someone in place to remind them of the mask.
Well, there's somebody out there.
Oh, okay, are they reminding them?
I don't know.
You know what I'm saying though?
Yeah, I know.
It just kind of helps.
I agree. I mean, we need to be proactive in mask wearing. I think is what you're trying to say.
Yes.
And the other thing I think BJ is saying, which we all need to work on, is we just need to be more consistent in how we do it.
And that's really, I think that's the maximum we can do with that, BJ. Unfortunately, yeah.
Well, I'm telling you, masks save lives. I'm telling you the truth. Because my son-in-law visited me that Wednesday and was diagnosed that Friday with COVID-19. He visited me, sat in my bedroom where my computer is and worked on my computer. I sat on the bed, I kept my mask on. And that's really, the mask and God is the only thing that saved me. I'm telling you the truth. Then Lisa, my daughter, you know, came to see me that Sunday. And she was diagnosed that Wednesday. Because we always wear masks in the house. She never takes it off. So I'm telling you, these masks are life-saving.
But I think the idea of what Mr. Ivy said is perfect. That we wait and see what the governor says, based on what he says. If we need to meet again, virtual or whatever, we do that. I would only add to that in the meantime, we also have conversation with the municipalities so that they can start having conversation along whatever lines we're gonna take, just to kind of make this happen seamlessly.
Because
I
if
think-
we don't have them in it.
It's pointless, so go ahead and start that conversation with them. So
We all
whichever
need to
way
be
you go.
engaged, there's many legs to this situation. You've got healthcare, law enforcement, the municipality, the county, the school system, the churches. I could go on and on.
But we as a board gotta do something though.
But
We can't be dismissing because somebody else won't do it.
We can take the lead, but I think we have determined that we will, see what the governor says sometime this week, in coordination with our attorney, with the manager. I will look at the, declarations. We'll try to do a, not a call meeting, but a teleconference, and see how we want to amend the declaration, if that's the desire of the board. And we know that in January, we'll come back with a revised ordinance that we can look at and hopefully, move from there. Okay.
But after the governor speak, I mean, it could be decided this week, we need to do a go-to meeting before the end of the week.
I agree.
Might not be next week, it
We don't
might
know
be this
what's right,
week.
we'll just have, yeah. We'll work
I
on the
wouldn't
governor's
time
budget.
it, you know what I'm saying, I'd say if you need to, do it this week.
Yeah, I definitely think it'll be this week after we hear from him either tomorrow or Wednesday.
I'm pretty sure I heard.
I think I heard tomorrow too, but
He's usually on Tuesday. He's usually
And
on
if it's
Tuesday.
tomorrow, you'd have a 48-hour notice.
To have it as a, oh, that's right, we got to do the, oh, yeah.
so that could be
It could be an emergency session, but
Well, are you intending this to be an action of the board, or are you
No,
intending to
but I
receive
want
input from the
I
board?
want the board to have the option of being informed and weighing in on the declaration.
So it's not going to be a formal.
So it's not a singular action, even though it is my signature on the declaration.
But if we're all gonna meet together, we could do it as a board action, is what you're saying.
You can, but the chair can do it as under
Right.
a expedited process, and she may speak with every board member 3 times, and
But I want every board member to know what it says and what it is we're declaring.
But that's individually, she'd have to do that, right?
and she has the authority to do it solely as chair. And if that's a process she's comfortable with, she can do that. If she prefers to have a meeting, then notice it up.
Whatever way you figure out.
We're comfortable with you doing, Carol. All right? You know, we're fine.
Well, hopefully the governor will speak tomorrow. And we'll go from there.
Okay.
All right, next we are, is April ready? We're gonna have a public hearing on SCAT.
I'm ready. We all for me?
Is there anyone here that wants to speak? I don't think there is, April, so
The lady said she wanted to speak to 2 of them.
no, it was just that, okay, that.
all right, at this point, we don't have anyone that wants to speak, so April, I will let you go ahead and tell us about SCAT.
So we published in the paper for a public hearing tonight to do a SCATS, redesign on one of our lines, and that's our fixed deviated route line. Your fixed deviated route for the county is the line that has specific stops, and it runs that route all day long, spare times. And so you've got in your packet, our redesigned model. And this isn't very far off from what this route has already been riding, but I'll point out a couple of changes. The biggest change we have, or additions we have, are that one day a week we will go out into the county and you can sit at the top, going to Gibson on Tuesdays, Laurel Hill on Wednesdays, and I'm sorry, it says Gibson again on Thursday, but that is in this print, that would be Waverham on Thursdays. So we will go to each of those one day a week, bring those citizens into town, and then bring them back out to those townships. And if you scroll down, you can see that we're adding Lowe's, we're adding King Street, which will serve RCC and the Scotland County Complex, if people need to go there. And then we're also adding Scotland Place, the senior center. That has not been on the route.
if you keep scrolling down, and this is where the public hearing comes into play, whenever we change stops or we eliminate stops, those have to come to a public hearing. And so that's why we're here. And so you can see we are not totally eliminating many stops at all. There are a few that we're just repositioning to different stops in the community, very near to where they already were. But we have found through speaking for our drivers, looking at information over the years, few people are getting on at some of these stops or get on at these stops. And so we needed to either eliminate those or reposition them to what we hope is a better place. So I'll be glad to answer any questions about the new lines. One thing I'll point out is that we will have 2 buses driving these lines. And so when it says first stop time, that is when the first bus will stop at each of these locations. And then there will be the bus stop on the hour, every hour at each spot.
April.
So I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Yes, yeah. All the areas we talking about eliminating is located primarily in the black community. Why are you saying you're gonna eliminate them? How's those folks gonna get a chance to get to the point where their services at? And I haven't heard anything about any problems or either complaints. Why are you gonna eliminate it? I didn't hear it.
There's a lag in here.
We didn't read this line for the purpose of eliminating it, but if you look at Rob's Convenience, we're stopping at Rob. Okay. If you look at Rob's Convenience, we were stopping there. No, people that are riding. Like Brothers in the Hood, we were stopping there. And we repositioned that under Marcellus housing area here. Save a Lot, that location is closed now. There's nothing there. So there was no reason to stop there. We're still stopping on Main Street. Just moved to like El Produce Market Road. We just repositioned within 2 blocks. Not many people are getting on there. And where we were stopping appeared to be a little bit dangerous because it was on a bigger travel. We were in the inner produce market in Old Lumberton. I feel like it's almost putting our citizens that would be standing there and a SCAT's bus stopping there for people to unload. Yes. If we move just over, we can still pick up the same people, but I hope it's a little safer destination. Northside Shopping Center, we're getting information from our drivers that people just aren't getting on and off there. We already have 3 other grocery stores on our list, which are Another Food Line, Piglet, and Christie. We have a lot on our list, Carly T, a laundromat on our list. And in that shopping center, that was the 2 major, if somebody went there, that's what they were going for, we believe, is the grocery store and probably the laundromat. That's the rationale behind that. I'm not sure if I answered your question completely, Mr. McFadden.
No, I didn't get that. I didn't understand that. But I still don't understand why you're saying that. I see 3 locations on here eliminated. You know, and I know that's indirect. It's in the black community. I mean, they got to walk all the way downtown. They don't need transportation then. Just because I haven't heard no complaints from you or the driver that we'll have to eliminate it. I mean, just because one incident, it makes sure to stop it, and they're having funds for that. I still don't see that.
And along those lines, Ms. April, when I look at like the elimination of Rob's Convenience, that what would be the closest stop after this one is eliminated for people who live in that particular community?
So where Rob's is, where if you envision us traveling on Main Street, and so we stop at NC Works, and then we would come up, and if you keep going that way, you can turn off onto Marcellus Street and Milton Street, and so you turn off, and the housing, you right, apartments, that's close to Rob's Convenience.
Train track.
You're
You talking about,
And so we
you
thought,
talking about a different location, April.
which is all established stop.
Rob is off, she talking about K Street. You talking about Boys in the Hood, I think. But Rob is off on K Street.
Yes,
And
I'm sorry, you're right, you're right. I was talking about Brothers Hood. Rob's Convenience is right down from the Housing Authority's Learning Center. It's like the community
right.
center.
That's a lot.
As we thought, if we
It's
were
right
already
now.
stopping at the Housing Authority Learning Center,
That's
we would be
3/4 of a
picking
mile.
people up. That's one stop in the Housing Authority.
You still
Another
talking about
stop.
something different.
Is actually the next stop on the right after that, near Pitt Fritz Street
I think we've got two
and Rainbow
communities
66.
mixed up. Rob's is on McKay,
She's
the
talking
one
about
she's
Warren
talking
She talking
about,
about
I don't know what the name of
Washington
it
Park.
She's
is.
talking about
Washington Park, yeah.
Rob's is the one, April, right on Caledonia Road at the corner of McKay, right before you get to the railroad track.
Right.
Yeah.
And then the other one is down Caledonia.
That's right.
And Horns is
And
down
right down from
Caledonia.
that,
It seems to me that Rob should be a pickup point.
Essential, that's essential.
And, if Brothers in the Hood, the one at Produce Market Road, that's the wrong name. Produce Market Road, that's where a lot of folks,
Not the other direction.
yeah, but I'm saying from Rob, when you come from Rob, you on,
They call Walker Park.
yeah, and, you're gonna come on up there. But, the stops need to be
Where the people need it.
and it should be should not be terminated because the bus just should come there. And the funds are available, and if you don't stop there, then they don't have the opportunity to ride the bus. And I agree with Clarence, uptown, there's a drop-off, that's not a pickup.
I made it downtown, I don't need a ride.
Yeah, so, what you put here as well is very good. There may need to be some input from the community in some kind of way, to where these pickups ought to be. I don't know, I don't ride it, so I can't speak for the folk, and nobody has spoken to me concerning this. I just know that, NC Works, now, this is the last month.
Right.
It will be in that location, but perhaps the people would still come there.
It's a good
It's-
location.
yeah, it's a good location.
There's a parking lot and it's safe, yeah.
You can always use Hilltop, my little place, if you want to turn in there. I have plenty of turnaround space.
let me,
That's the only question on
let
the
me say
statement.
this as well, because it all ties in together, this one line. This is one line for SCATS. SCATS also offers employment lines, medical lines, dialysis lines. All of these combined offer a much more rate of services in this one route. And so there may be something on this fixed route that you don't see, but we are serving it through a medical line or through an employment line or their form of service that people can call and make an appointment, and we pick them up and we take them as well.
Do we have a stop or pickup in the county at Sneed's Road?
Why would you need one in Sneed Road?
Alan Sneak.
I'm from that's what the people would meet there.
Like
Yeah.
Alan's,
Well, if I want to thank you for coming to Waco for the first time I ever heard of SCAT coming to Waco. Thank you.
I don't think that's been the Steve Grove either.
Well, and
It
we're
was the municipality.
we're trying to expand. We're trying to expand. We're trying to expand with the resources we have. Of course, we have a limited number of drivers. We have so many vans. Of course, cleaning out room of the day, and we're taking slow steps to see if we can get out in the community and what type of ridership we get as well from people out in the community that feel they need to come into town and then be brought back out. So I can see us starting slow, and hopefully, if it goes well, we see our friendships, we can try to find a way to go out in the community more or go further out more often. Now, Mr. Alford, I will say, if somebody in Smeads Grove or anywhere else has a medical appointment or an employment, we go get them and bring them back.
Oh, okay.
That's just another type of service offer.
But there's not a service for that, for somebody that's not on the line, that's maybe a grocery shopping, specific to, you know, they live up between Wagram and Spring Hill, because I had this, a lady ask me about it, and she said she was told she didn't qualify, but I mean, she's on disability and Medicare, and, but, so there's no line that they could call and say.
Unfortunately, you're right, Mr. Robbins, that's a gap in service in our community. Because scouts, like many other things, there's all types of, they're not a service right now that will just pick you up anywhere in the county, take you anywhere you want to go. Unfortunately, right now, we don't even have the staff that we could run lines like that every day.
Well, not anywhere you want to go, but I mean, certain places, but medically.
We are expanding, we haven't done employment before, and now we do employment. And we're going to make this.
But medically, we do have that.
Yes.
Okay.
Medically, we could pick them up.
But my understanding, we need numbers to get money.
Yeah.
When the people is not utilizing it, we don't need it. When you eliminate them, I mean, I know the stop gonna be right here at this center. I'm gonna walk, if I had to walk half a mile to get here, to get on the bus, and the bus, they eliminate the stop. What are the choices I got? Other than what, get a cab or walk all the way? But we need input from the citizens and because to get the money. And you talking about eliminate, I see 4 or 5 sites you eliminate. I mean, how is that helping out?
April, do we make stops at all the, housing units? Senior citizen, you know, I'm speaking of the ones out here. Do we have, how many stops do we make there a week?
So this line, if you see, it stops at all our housing complexes. It'll stop at least 4 or 5 times a day at all the housing complex, because 2 buses will run this route all day long. And we can take a look at those. You mentioned 4 or 5 eliminated stops. We'll be glad to take a look at those. Those are in some proximity to somewhere we're already stopping. That's why we shifted and combined 2 stops really, instead of eliminating the whole stop.
I don't want to see you eliminate no stop
Thing that,
because you're stopping all in the neighborhood that I'm familiar with.
one thing we have in our, is there a certain stop that you all feel is not on here, or a certain neighborhood that we are not getting to on this line?
I mean, you talking about eliminate the one we're talking about. All the one you see on this paper, you talking about eliminate. And now that that's in those areas, low poverty area where I know for a fact, some of them don't have cars.
Well, I
They
think-
eligible for it, eligible for it, and by their eligibility, I mean, we get the money for it.
So do you want all of these eliminations put back in, or just, or are there some that are more important than others?
The ones she talking about eliminate them, they're the most important I see right now.
You want them back in, okay.
And for me, when I look at it, like the Terra Village one, I think they eliminated 3, but there's still one at the office. But like the Rawls convenience, I just can't in my own mind visualize anything that's even close. If you live, say from Rawls back towards East Warrenburg School or parts of Ministry, that's a long walk if you gotta go either
That's
way
a
of
long
those stops. I mean,
Long walk.
when you say you gotta go down to the Learning Center or Partners in Ministry or up Main Street, if you live in that area, I see on here, they're gonna miss out. Terra Village, I see, has one at the office, so that one is not as bad. But that Rawls convenience, I mean, there's a lot of people that we're missing and not giving that opportunity, I think, if we eliminate that.
One thing we can do, because this is public, tonight was the posted public hearing. So one thing that could be done is we can go off and take a route, get a graphic of the route, or at least, the Brothers in the Hood stop and Rob stop, show that area, and then go ahead and just pinpoint the other stops. So we can show, okay, are we moving something 2 blocks, or are we moving something 2 miles? So we can do that and give that
Right here
information.
with the first ones to that Rock convenience store, we had started in about a year. So people already made up in their minds that they're not gonna stop there. They're not stopping there.
Right.
So,
For me, I mean, I know the county, I haven't spent a lot of time riding the roads of Scotland County, but I haven't done it in a long time. But a visual of this would be really helpful to me to see, like you just said, are we talking 3 blocks or are we talking a mile? That makes a difference. So, I think that you're right, this is the hearing and we don't, your timeline, April, on implementation.
That is to right now, based on COVID, and before I took over Scouts, one of these lines was not running, and so I'm just trying to get the lines running again. And so, one of these lines didn't run in a year, so I'm trying to get the line again and the lines at this time. So, let's run in and at the same time. I will be glad to next month map this out, like you all said, a visual. I can tell you none of these stops that read as repositioned have been moved a mile.
Okay.
But I'll be glad to bring a visual and you all can see all the stops, how it flows across the county. And we can continue.
Does that sound good to y'all? A visual? Okay.
And I used to drive for Scotland Transportation, so I'm familiar.
All right, April, thank you for that. That was a good conversation, and I think that, it was a good reminder to know that we're not running this route, that COVID has everything down, but we need to get prepared for when we can. Okay, thank you, April.
No problem, thank you.
And number 6 is voting delegate to the NCACC Legislative Conference. The Legislative Goals Conference is held every 2 years. I was asked to serve on the Legislative Goals Committee, which I attended 2 Zoom meetings last week to develop the goals for consideration by the entire association. And the Legislative Conference is January. Let's go back and look.
14th and 15th.
What'd you say, 13, 15?
14th and 15th.
14 and 15, okay. So, I would like to be appointed as the voting delegate since I have served on the committee to develop the goals. But at the same time, the Legislative Goals Conference will be open to all commissioners that want to attend virtually. And to me, the Legislative Goals Conference every 2 years is where the real meat of what happens in our association is developed, because there's these goals that go to our legislators, in Raleigh that they work on, throughout the year. So I just, will remind y'all of that at the January meeting, but, I am requesting, since I'm on the committee, to be appointed as a voting delegate, but we'll need a nomination.
Well, you're right, it's no excuse for us not to be a part of it, not if it's gonna be done, whatever, right?
The what?
I say, it's no excuse for us not to tune into this now, right? Because we can sit there and, yeah, and look at this on our phone, our remote, however we choose to do it. Electronic wise, we can sit there with it.
Everyone.
So Jason, just remind us of it, okay? You know how forgetful we are and, how I am, but I shouldn't try to tell all y'all this. And we'll try to tune in. I like to tune in. You wanna make a motion that Carol is our voting delegate?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Thank you. And like I said, we'll meet in January and we'll have a reminder, and you'll get a link via email so that you can attend virtually.
An alternate.
We do need an alternate. Who would like to be an alternate if I cannot be the voting delegate?
Commissioner Goldston, would you like to be the alternate?
Not this year, sir.
Mr. Ivy, would you like to be the
I
alternate?
don't think I'll be here that week.
You don't? Okay. Mr. Gibson, would you like to be the alternate?
Are you assuming you're talking to Commissioner BJ Gibson?
That's right, we got 2 years.
I think she was looking at Commissioner.
I will be glad to do that.
Thank you, Whit.
Yeah, I'll work on it that week.
All right.
BJ, we gotta work through this Friday, somehow.
Laurel Hill Community Center update, Mr. Patterson, what you got for us?
Okay, nothing significant. I have contacted the architect after the board met 2 weeks ago and authorized procedure, so they are currently working on the designs and plans from the facility that had a budget estimate of $2,380,000 approximately. The engineer does believe that with that, and where we are at this point in time, he does believe that a potential groundbreaking could happen late spring. So by the end of fiscal year 2021.
What amount you said it was, 2.8 million?
2,380,000, I believe.
380,000.
Yes.
3 million, okay.
And groundbreaking within our current fiscal year.
Yes,
Project will span 2 years, a 2-year budget.
yes. So groundbreaking before June 30th of 2021. And I've not discussed the estimated construction window, but I would be surprised if it extended beyond the 12 months.
Construction window?
Yes.
You have
I mean, they built that school and.
Yeah, it's not gonna be that quick. This time next year, they ought to be playing ball with this.
I would hope so, but until the architect tells me to, I'm not gonna say it.
And I'm not gonna say that you said it either.
But we're gonna tell them
Maybe we need to tell the architect.
we're gonna tell them when we want it finished.
As soon as possible.
We're gonna give them a
That's
date.
right. That's right.
Anything, boards and committee appointments, we do have one appointment, for this month. Sam Cribb has applied to be appointed to the Historic Properties Commission. We have a vacancy there. So I submitted nomination, Mr. Cribb to serve on Historic Properties Commission.
You say a second.
You did that, yes.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Now we'll get our COVID update.
With that, currently we're still continuing a trend upwards. We are over 2,100 cases. Of course, the total cases, that is going to continue to rise. That will not go down. That is the total cases from when we first started tracking the pandemic, of which we've had 1,900 recover. Recovery are basically outside of 14 days, and we're no longer tracking symptoms. We did have our 43rd death last week. I was, honestly, it's to the point where I was glad we did not have a death register over the weekend. We currently, so there are 150 active cases, and these are Scotland County citizens, residents that are being tracked. If you remove the institutional cases that we are tracking, such as long-term care, that leaves 136 cases in the community. I will mention we do have 5 cases at in the Scotland County Jail. We went for a very long time that we've had none, then we went up to as high as 11. I was on a conference call within the last 2 weeks, and they were talking about the number of jails, facilities that have COVID cases, and these are county jails. And the majority of county jails have a COVID case at any point in time. The sheriff is working with the health department. They have rapid tests, so anybody who is beginning to be symptomatic is given a COVID test. People who are brought in are kept in quarantine for a period of time, and of course, they are still working diligently with the courts and the magistrates to keep the numbers of people in jail in custody as low as possible. So the people that are in custody just can't be anywhere other than in custody. And that's pretty much by decision of the court.
Kevin, if you know, when the sheriff had 11 people with COVID, was he able to isolate?
He was able to isolate the best he could. I don't know how many people he can actually isolate, but with it, when you have confirmed cases, he was able to segregate those cases. So they may not have been isolated, but they were segregated from the general population.
So this corona with the corona?
Yes.
Okay.
How comfortable are you with this correctional number? It seems like every report we get from them is one.
I'll admit that is a number.
That is a number, because that ain't the right number.
But that's a number.
Well, I've heard different numbers from Scotia Village.
I know there's units out there in Scotland Correctional, that's all that's in that unit.
And I heard 13 in Scotia for last week.
And some of that could also depend, they still may not be counted to Scotland County because they are still a permanent resident of a surrounding county or somewhere.
I know.
I just feel like they're giving you smoke, and they give you that one every week.
Yeah, the Scotland Correctional number,
They're just giving you a one.
it's a number.
Yeah.
But if I went to my daughter's in Wake County and got sick and stayed up there sick, the number would be a Scotland County.
It would be a Scotland County number. And that's why also the inpatient, those are the people who are admitted to the hospital, and it's 7. If you talk to Greg Wood, that number is going to be higher than that.
Oh, it's in the 20s.
Yeah, because of the number of people who come here from Richmond, Robinson, and Marlboro counties.
Are they reopening or planning to reopen that Hamlet Hospital? Because I know they set it up back when this all started.
It's set up, but they have not.
They haven't opened.
They have not activated it yet. And until the point in time, really until you start having, once you start having redirections from, or direct redirections from Case Beer for us, Case Beer, more regional, Charlotte, those, that one will.
They'll fill it up quick then.
Well, one of the problems is staffing.
Yeah.
It's what?
Well, that was being run by
Staffing.
the National Guard, right, was running.
Then I have known someone personally that's in the emergency room at First Health right now and has been for 24 hours and there's no bed at First Health. So, yeah, but it's not good anywhere. All right, Kevin?
With that, you'll see the cases that we have. Trying to get the numbers. My computer does not like me when I'm wearing a mask. But ultimately, we are still up right now with well over 100 cases in the last week. One number that is actually being supplied to the school system, I think it's 135 cases this week. One number that is being supplied to the school system on a weekly basis is the rate of new infections per 100,000, because that is the information that the state uses as well as the federal government. And when you take the number of people we have, multiplying that out, our infection rate per 100,000 is over 500. And again, the White House Task Force looks for a rate of less than 100 new infections per 100,000 in the last week. So that is still going to be a difficult number for that's going to be a difficult number for school reopening.
So you're saying we have 100 people infected since when now? Since the last meeting?
And the last week,
Really?
yes. And with that, you had a number of people who came off of infections, who, because they recovered.
Yeah.
And then the number of new infections as well.
And this doesn't count the Thanksgiving holidays at all, does it?
Thanksgiving holidays will be hitting within the next, will probably start showing up this week. They may have already triggered, but they will be being in probably today's reports, today through Friday.
Now, is this a hospital? I'm sorry, I had to go to the ladies' room. But does this include the hospital or is it separate? Does this include the hospital?
These are people who are just Scotland County residents.
Okay.
So, the people who are in the hospital from Scotland County are counted here. But if you are a Robinson, Marlboro, Richmond County resident in Scotland healthcare system, you are not counted in.
Okay. So this is really our people.
These are our people. Also with this, the state, along with following guidance from the CDC, they are changing quarantine rules. In case you hear about it, of course, the standard quarantine is still 14 days. And this is from exposure. And you are considered to be exposed if you are around somebody for 15 minutes within 6 feet within a 24-hour period. So if you're around somebody for 5 minutes, 4 hours later, 5 minutes, 8 hours later, 5 minutes, you are exposed. That time counts within 2 days before and after someone who either has a positive test or becomes symptomatic. So if someone is symptomatic, they'd have to go back 2 days around anybody who they were around. Now, if a person has been in there for 10 days, has completed 10 days of quarantine, and they do not have symptoms after daily monitoring, quarantine they can come out of quarantine, or after 7 days of quarantine and they have no symptoms, and they have a negative test. And this would actually be the viral test. So this is not the quick test. This is the test that takes 2 days to get back. So if you're getting this from the Doolin Center, or one of the number of other places, Bright Hopewell on Mondays and Tuesdays, they do the long test. It takes 2 to 3 days to get back. That's the test that you would prefer to work for. The quick test is the antigen test. That is not considered here. And of course, you're still considered, you should, even if you are eligible to leave quarantine, you should still monitor yourself for symptoms for 14 days. Next item, updates, the master plan, Parks and Recreation has been continuing to work. They have, their activities are varied a lot more than they used to, but of course, the master plan that the board passed did include work improvements at Hammond Park. The top 2 pictures are the exercise equipment and the obstacle course. These were partially funded by grants for that installment. The bottom left-hand corner is a gazebo that was actually built as an Eagle Scout project. The bottom right is the shelter that is being built. It does have bathrooms. That building is scheduled to have, they're hoping to have final inspection this week on this building. I have been trying to reach out and find a facilitator for the monument committee. That process is ongoing. So I have a number of companies that I've reached out to, and I'll follow back up until I can get some additional response for a facilitator for that committee. Last month, the schools did make a request for the allocation of contingency. The board voted to allocate some of the funds for it, but they wanted to make sure that the project was complete and all other funds were spent. At this point in time, just as an update, the only payment that is left to be made is the retainage of $50,000. And with that, the current contingency amount is still at approximately $215,000. So the school would like to request that $150,000 of that fund be allocated for the construction of a JROTC training building. With these funds, the way it would work out, if these funds are not allocated to a construction project for the schools, those funds would be allocated back to a debt service payment. That debt service payment would actually reduce the lease payment that the schools would pay us, which would increase their operating dollars. So if these funds are not used, ultimately, it shifts from capital dollars to operating dollars for the Board of Education. Which the Board of Education could then come back and ask for a direct.
So we need to pass it tonight?
Yes, the board can allocate this funds to, tonight. And at that point in time, they would, probably fairly quickly begin operation on, a building, primarily a shell building. It's an open space building. It isn't closed. It's a basic metal building. But
Is it appropriate to make the motion now?
It would be.
I move that, we release the money from the Scotland County Board of Education, of the amount of $150,000 for ROTC building.
Do we get a second? Second. We have a motion and a second. Is there any more discussion or questions?
I want to, Kevin, clarify again what you said. If we don't spend the money, it ultimately will be used as a lease payment, which would free up money that, to give them more money in their operating.
Yes, sir. With our current agreement, the Board of Education basically leases, South Johnson from the county. And that lease payment is equal to the debt service. So if we go off and we use those funds to reduce the debt service payment, their lease payment goes down by those dollars. And the lease payment comes out of operating dollars versus capital.
So then we end up with 150,000 more operating capital for the current year.
Yes.
But how much is that, what impact would that JROTC bill have for the students at Scotland High? I guess I always liked that program. I always thought it was very beneficial to kids even high school.
It's a good program. It is a good program.
It would just delay their project 6 months, because
Yes.
they do it till the budget time.
Yes.
This allows them to go ahead.
I mean, that's the only reason we kept it off last month, was just to make sure that the final number, right?
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
All right.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries.
Okay.
Commissioner, comments removed. I will start with Commissioner Gibson.
Have nothing in particular, just like the rest of the group, to welcome Reverend Commissioner Gibson to our group. Thank you. Look forward to working with you.
How do you do that?
Mr. Alford?
I just need to ask a question.
Okay.
I guess, Mr. Kevin, Scatter Housing Program, since the council of government no longer operates that, Agent Larry is now doing it for us.
Yes.
And, I would like to have some information as to how much money it is, how much it is for residents, whatever has come down from the state. I'm not aware of any of the numbers.
Okay.
Can you give that to us?
I will. As a matter of fact, I just had conversations with Adrian within the last few weeks. We've actually gotten an expansion in that program. I cannot tell you what those numbers are exactly right off the top of my head, but basically we've gone from, I think, 7 residences to approximately 11. But I will get that information and I will send that out by email to all the commissioners.
And, there needs to be some contact folk on this board, who would directly work with them. And that's something we need to decide. But, he's doing houses in Scotland County, and I don't know anything about it. I don't think any other commissioner knows. And so when folk ask us, about getting their house done, we need to kind of start that back up. I was the head person with 2 other community members on the board, but,
I was on that board too, Scatter Housing, it was called a Scatter Housing Board. And I was on that board, you and who else? That's all the commissions on?
Well, there were 2, there was Evelyn Allen at the time, that's many years ago, and Walter Rogers, but we ceased to function once, things began to change, so we need to go back now that we in charge again.
Yeah, I just think we need a complete overview of how it operates.
Yeah.
And how we engage with it as a city. Make that happen.
We can do that. Now, one thing about that, with this project, we're trying to wrap up the 2017 grant cycle.
Okay.
The 2020 grant cycle hasn't even started yet. And some of that was, we were going through it and then basically the state stopped it. So we're hoping to wrap up the 2017 because there was some money left over across the state that we were able to tap into because other agencies did not spend. So we got reallocations. The So hopefully we will be wrapping those up, and then we will go into the 2020 program. And I can also talk with Adrian about scheduling him to actually do a presentation to this board.
Yeah, we need that, because when I was, active there, we were getting up to $75,000 to build a two-bedroom house. Then it went, that was scrapped, it went down to $27,000, $45,000, rehab.
Right.
And then it went down to 27,000, and I don't know what it is
I
now,
think it's 25.
but you can't get much for 25,000. But I don't know what it is.
The only other thing, is I wondered, the difficulty we had here in April on our system tonight, have we made any progress toward improving our video conferencing for commissioners?
Yes, actually, I have gotten a quote, from a company, looking at the EOC, not from turning around, and I'm not sure if the issue was on April's side or on our side. But, I do have a quote for, putting in, basically replacing the control boards and installing video equipment in the EOC, a camera system that would allow us to have better teleconferencing abilities as well as streaming live streaming the meeting, and improving our sound quality in those meetings.
Good, all right. Mr. McFadden, anything?
I don't have anything.
Okay, Mr. Gibbs, Mr. BJ Gibbs,
I don't have anything.
okay?
The only thing I've got, you've most all already seen it. The
Yeah.
embroidering is now available at Shirt Tails.
Let me see, turn around. Oh, that's
And
right,
if you can
okay.
take a shirt or a coat or a whatever, and I had it digitized there, so, you just go in and tell them whatever, if you want to buy from them, you can, but I mean, if you got a shirt or a coat or whatever, they can embroider it on, they'll embroider it. And
It looks nice, we look, so many times, it came out nice, didn't it?
yeah, it turned out good.
Yeah.
Have you had it done on any other thing besides the shirt?
No, but they can do it on
Like, yeah.
anything that machine can go through.
Thank you for
Basically,
doing that, sure.
a jacket or whatever.
Yeah.
And if you want something on that side, you can put it too. It's just up to you.
All right. Ms. Betty, anything? Okay. All right, so at this time, stay tuned. You may not be hearing, this week as far as the, declaration is concerned. If not, then I wish all of us a safe, joyous, blessed holiday season as we go forward. Stay safe, stay well, take care of yourself and your family and your friends until January. We are adjourned.
Need a motion? Motion to adjourn.
This conference is no longer being recorded.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion by John, second by Betty.
Over tonight. Already, I'm everything.
All right. Sorry, next question is at 9.